When you truly begin to understand that you have the right and the power to reject any thought, feeling, or influence that does not serve your growth, something inside of you shifts. You stop living life as though you are at the mercy of the people around you, and you start living as the conscious creator of your own experience. Most people never realize that they've been conditioned to accept everything that comes into their mind as truth. They hear a comment from someone, they absorb it, they experience a setback, and they automatically accept the idea that they are unlucky or unworthy. They feel a wave of negative emotion, and they surrender to it without question. But the truth is, you can decide right now that anything which does not align with your vision for your life has no right to take root in your mind. When a negative thought arrives, you can reject it the same way you would reject an unwelcome guest at your door. Imagine standing at the entrance of your mind, guarding it with discipline and awareness. Just because a thought knocks doesn't mean you have to let it in. Just because a person says something hurtful or tries to pull you into their emotional storm doesn't mean you have to accept their invitation to suffer. You can mentally say, "No, this doesn't belong here." And in that instant, you protect the energy you need to build the life you want. The challenge is, most people have been trained from childhood to accept negativity without even noticing it. A teacher may have told you you're not good at something. A friend may have teased you about your appearance. A relationship may have ended in betrayal. Over time, those words and experiences sink into your subconscious and begin to form the identity you operate from. If you never learn to consciously reject them, you start believing they are who you are. But these are not truths. They are opinions, they are projections, they are emotional debris that other people throw at you. The moment you choose to ignore them, you weaken their power. The moment you refuse to dwell on them, they begin to fade. Rejecting negative influence doesn't mean you deny reality. It means you choose the reality you are willing to participate in. If someone tries to provoke you, you don't have to give them the satisfaction of seeing you react. If a memory tries to haunt you, you don't have to replay it over and over in your mind. Your power lies in deciding where your mental energy goes. And here's the thing, your emotional life follows your mental life. If you allow yourself to think better, you will feel better. If you refuse to indulge the thoughts that drag you down, you automatically free yourself from much of the emotional weight you've been carrying. Think about the people you admire most, the ones who seem unshakable in the face of challenges. They are not immune to negative situations, but they are masters at rejecting the mental seeds that would grow into destructive feelings. They know that thoughts are like invitations. You can RSVP, yes, or no. They choose no for anything that threatens their inner peace. And because of that, they maintain their clarity and strength in situations that would crush someone else. When you start practicing this mental rejection, you'll notice how many little moments each day try to pull you off course. A driver cuts you off in traffic. An email arrives with criticism. A person you care about ignores your message. All of these things are opportunities to either hand over your emotional control or keep it firmly in your own hands. The difference between someone who is always anxious, frustrated, and resentful, and someone who is calm, focused, and resilient is not that life treats them differently. It's that they treat their thoughts differently. The key is to create a habit of awareness. Pay attention to the tone of the thoughts that pass through your mind. The moment you notice a thought that creates a tightness in your chest, a heaviness in your heart, or a sinking in your stomach, pause. Ask yourself, does this thought serve my growth? Does it bring me closer to the life I want? If the answer is no, reject it. Turn your attention to something that strengthens you instead. This is not about ignoring problems that need solving. It's about refusing to fuel problems that exist only in your imagination or in someone else's perception. Over time, as you get better at this, you'll find that people's opinions matter less and less. You'll stop craving approval from those who don't have your best interests at heart. You'll stop engaging in pointless arguments that only drain you. You'll stop rehearsing painful memories as if repeating them will somehow change them. Instead, your mental space will be filled with ideas, visions, and plans that inspire you. You will begin to feel lighter, more in control, and more aligned with who you want to become. The beauty of this practice is that you don't need anyone's permission to start. You don't need the world to change before you decide to guard your mind. You simply need to make a commitment to yourself that your mental energy is valuable and you will no longer give it away cheaply. Negative feelings will still knock on your door, but you'll know that you can let them pass without opening it. And each time you do, you become stronger, more confident, and more capable of creating the kind of life you deserve. What you focus on expands. This is not just a poetic phrase. It is a universal principle that operates whether you are aware of it or not. Every thought you dwell upon, every feeling you entertain, every mental picture you revisit again and again is feeding something. If you keep feeding negative feelings with your attention, they will grow stronger, take up more space in your mind, and begin to shape the way you see the world. On the other hand, if you intentionally direct your attention toward the things you want to experience, you give them life, energy, and room to flourish. Your attention is like water, and whatever you pour it on will grow. The tragedy is that most people unconsciously water the weeds in their mental garden while neglecting the seeds of their dreams. The human mind is an incredibly fertile place. It does not care whether the seeds you plant are positive or negative. It will grow whatever you give it. When you replay a hurtful conversation in your mind, you are planting more seeds of resentment and pain. When you imagine worst-case scenarios over and over again, you are planting seeds of fear and anxiety. When you fixate on someone else's behavior and how unfair it was, you are planting seeds of bitterness. The longer you give your attention to those seeds, the more they take root, until eventually they become a forest that blocks out the light of what's possible. But the same principle works in the opposite direction. If you choose to give your attention to gratitude, opportunities, solutions, and positive outcomes, you are planting seeds that will grow into resilience, joy, and success. The mind responds to repetition. Whatever you keep feeding it, it accepts as the truth. This means you have far more control over your emotional state and your future than you may have realized. The trick is to become aware of where your attention goes on a daily basis and to take responsibility for redirecting it when necessary. Most people think their emotions are caused by outside circumstances, but in reality, emotions are the result of what we choose to focus on. Two people can go through the same event and have completely different reactions because their attention is fixed on different aspects of it. One person might see a setback as a dead end, another might see it as an opportunity to grow. The difference is not in the event, it's in the focus. And focus is something you can train. When you find yourself feeling weighed down, ask yourself, what am I focusing on right now? You will almost always find that your attention is locked on something you don't want, something you can't control, or something that takes you backward instead of forward. The moment you shift that focus towards something constructive, your feelings will begin to change. At first, it might feel unnatural because you're breaking old habits of thought. But with practice, you will find it easier and easier to shift your attention away from the things that drain you and toward the things that energize you. You can't stop negative thoughts from trying to get your attention. They will always be there. People will still say hurtful things. Circumstances will still challenge you. Doubts will still whisper in the back of your mind. But you don't have to stay there. Your attention is a choice, and it is a choice you make moment by moment. The more you choose to focus on what you want instead of what you fear, the more your outer world will start to reflect that inner focus. Think of it like tuning a radio. Every station is broadcasting all the time, but you only hear the one you're tuned to. If you keep tuning into the station of frustration, anger, and worry, that's the only music you'll hear in your life. If you tune into gratitude, solutions, and possibilities, you'll start hearing a completely different song. And here's the fascinating thing: once you shift your focus, you begin to notice opportunities and ideas that you couldn't see before. They were there all along, but your attention was locked on something else, so you were blind to them. The energy of your life follows the direction of your focus. If your mind is constantly circling around what someone else did to you, you are essentially giving them free rent in your head. You're handing over your creative power to them. But if you take that same mental energy and invest it in your goals, your personal growth, and the vision you have for your life, you start building momentum toward the future you want. It's not magic. It's simply the way the mind and reality interact. One of the fastest ways to change your focus is to ask better questions. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" ask, "What can I learn from this?" Instead of asking, "Why are they treating me like this?" ask, "How can I become stronger through this experience?" These questions shift your attention from victimhood to empowerment, from problems to possibilities. And the more you do this, the more natural it becomes. Another way to train your focus is to deliberately create time each day to think about what you want. Most people spend more time planning their weekend than they do planning their life. But if you set aside even 10 minutes a day to visualize your goals, feel the emotions of already having them, and think about the actions you can take to move toward them, you are directing your attention like a laser. That consistent focus will begin to change the way you think, the way you feel, and ultimately, the way your life unfolds. The ability to observe without reacting emotionally is one of the most powerful skills a person can ever develop. Most people go through life constantly being pulled by the strings of their emotions, reacting to every word, every look, every situation, without stopping to realize that they are giving away their power each time they do. Emotional detachment is not about being cold, heartless, or indifferent. It is about holding on to your inner stability regardless of what is happening around you. It's about keeping your center no matter who is trying to push you off balance. When you master this, you stop being a puppet to external circumstances and you start becoming the master of your own inner world. When someone says something that would normally offend you, your automatic reaction might be to snap back, get defensive, or carry that anger with you for hours, even days. That is emotional slavery. The person who provoked you is long gone, but their words are still living rent, free in your head, influencing your mood, affecting your productivity, and shaping your interactions with others. Emotional detachment frees you from this trap. It allows you to see what's happening, acknowledge it, and then choose your response from a place of clarity instead of impulsive emotion. Think of your mind like a calm body of water. Every time you react emotionally without control, you're throwing a stone into that water, creating ripples that disturb the peace. The more stones you throw, the rougher the waters become, and soon you can't see clearly into them at all. But when you cultivate detachment, you stop throwing stones unnecessarily. You allow the surface to remain still, which means you can think, reflect, and make decisions from a place of wisdom. Emotional detachment is not the same as suppression. Suppression means you still feel the emotion, but you bury it inside, and that always finds a way to resurface later. Detachment is different. It's about changing your relationship to the emotion itself. You become the observer rather than the participant. You notice the emotion rise, you acknowledge it, and then you decide whether or not to feed it. This keeps you from being consumed by it. One of the most important truths about life is that people will always have opinions, behaviors, and moods that you can't control. You cannot control what others think of you, you cannot control how they act, and you cannot control the storms they carry within themselves. What you can control is whether or not you let those storms enter your own space. Emotional detachment acts like a shield. It doesn't stop the wind from blowing, but it keeps you from being blown over by it. The power in this is enormous. When you are emotionally detached, you make better decisions because you're not letting temporary feelings drive permanent actions. You stop overreacting to situations that don't deserve your energy. You begin to respond instead of react. And most importantly, you protect your mental clarity, which is essential for building the life you want. Imagine being able to walk through your day without being rattled by every little thing that happens. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and instead of exploding with anger, you let it pass because you know it's not worth the energy. A co-worker tries to push your buttons, but you see right through it and choose to remain calm. Someone ignores your text message, but instead of spiraling into overthinking, you keep your focus on your own priorities. This is the kind of freedom emotional detachment gives you. It's the ability to live on your own terms, not as a prisoner to the shifting moods of others. It also makes you far more powerful in relationships. When you are not emotionally reactive, people sense that they cannot control you through manipulation or provocation. You become a steady presence, someone who doesn't crumble or lash out under pressure. This commands respect without you having to demand it. People start treating you differently because they realize they can't easily shake you. To develop this skill, you have to practice awareness. Pay attention to the moments when you feel yourself getting pulled into someone else's emotional state. Notice the trigger. Is it a tone of voice, a specific phrase, an action that reminds you of a past hurt? Once you can identify these triggers, you can pause before reacting. In that pause, you give yourself the gift of choice. You can choose to take a deep breath, to mentally step back, to remind yourself that you don't have to take on anyone else's emotional baggage. It's not about pretending you don't care. It's about caring for your own mental and emotional health first. You can still have compassion for others while refusing to drown in their chaos. You can still love deeply without losing yourself in someone else's highs and lows. In fact, emotional detachment often makes your relationships healthier because you're coming from a place of stability rather than neediness or reactivity. Over time, this approach becomes second nature. You start noticing that situations which once would have ruined your entire day now barely affect you. You find yourself thinking more clearly, feeling more in control, and living more intentionally. The world around you doesn't stop throwing challenges your way, but you meet them with a calm, steady mind. You realize that you can stand in the middle of chaos and still remain untouched inside. Every negative feeling begins as a thought. Before the heaviness in your chest, before the tension in your stomach, before the frustration in your voice, there is a thought, often small, quick, and subtle, that sparks it all. Most people go through life unaware of this connection. They believe their emotions are caused directly by external events, as if feelings are automatic responses over which they have no control. But the truth is, your mind is the first battlefield, and if you win the battle there, you win in every other area of life. The moment you understand that emotions follow thoughts, you gain the ability to change your entire experience by changing the way you think. Negative emotions don't appear out of nowhere. They are the product of repeated thought patterns, and those patterns become so familiar that you may not even realize they are there. You might wake up feeling anxious because your mind is rehearsing all the things that could go wrong in your day. You might feel irritated because you've been silently repeating a memory of someone who wronged you. You might feel hopeless because you've been telling yourself, without even speaking the words, that nothing you do makes a difference. Each of these feelings is a direct result of the thoughts you are entertaining. If you want to change the way you feel, you must first become the commander of your thoughts. That means noticing them, questioning them, and, when necessary, replacing them. The problem is, most people have been conditioned to accept every thought that enters their mind as if it were true. They don't stop to ask, where did this come from? Does it serve me? Do I want to keep thinking this? Instead, they let the thought settle in, feed it more attention, and then wonder why their emotions spiral downward. The mind is a place where ideas compete for dominance. Each thought you think is like a soldier on the battlefield. Some are fighting for your peace, your confidence, and your growth, while others are fighting for your fear, your doubt, and your limitations. If you let the negative side win, it will capture more and more territory in your mind until your entire outlook is shaded with pessimism. But when you recognize that you can train your mind to fight for you, everything changes. You start choosing thoughts that are aligned with the life you want instead of the life you fear. Training your mind begins with awareness. Throughout the day, pause and listen to your internal dialogue. When you feel an emotion rising, trace it back to the thought that triggered it. If you feel jealous, maybe it came from comparing yourself to someone else's success. If you feel discouraged, maybe it came from assuming your effort won't pay off. If you feel resentful, maybe it came from replaying a conversation where you felt disrespected. This awareness is powerful because it shows you that you are not your emotions. You are the thinker behind them, and that means you can choose differently. Once you see the link between thought and feeling, you can begin to intervene. If you notice a thought that makes you feel weak, replace it with one that strengthens you. If you notice a thought that brings you fear, replace it with one that brings you courage. If you notice a thought that keeps you stuck in the past, replace it with one that pulls you toward the future. This isn't about pretending challenges don't exist. It's about choosing the mental perspective that gives you the most power in facing them. The truth is, your mind can either be your greatest weapon or your greatest weakness. If you leave it untrained, it will be hijacked by old beliefs, external influences, and random fears. But if you take charge of it, it becomes a tool for creation, focus, and resilience. Every person who has transformed their life began by transforming the way they think. They learned to feed thoughts that inspire and starve thoughts that destroy. They understood that the battle is won long before the results show up in their outer world. It's won in the privacy of their own mind. Your career, your relationships, your health, your happiness, they all begin in the way you think about them. If you constantly think you're unlucky, you'll see evidence of that everywhere. If you constantly think people are against you, you'll interpret their actions through that lens. But if you train yourself to think in harmony with the life you want, believing that opportunities are around you, that you have the power to change, that challenges make you stronger, you'll start seeing proof of that instead. Every day is a chance to choose which side of the battlefield you're going to fight for. Will you let your thoughts be dictated by fear, comparison, and self-doubt? Or will you deliberately focus on ideas of strength, growth, and possibility? The choice is always yours, and the first step to winning is to remember that your feelings are not random. They are the product of the thoughts you allow to take root in your mind. When you take control of those thoughts, you take control of your emotions. And when you take control of your emotions, you take control of your life.